how do we own our shadows? Because a lot of people, a lot of light workers talk about light and talk about, the good things. And I think
Yeah.
shadow work is really important. And like, I love how we titled this talk, owning them, not just working with them or not just seeing them, it's just like owning them. They're a part of us, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I want to share like a little bit story what gets me into this because I
Yes.
know many of your followers are into yoga and meditation, and I see that you gathered amazing community in your Instagram, and I want to greet everybody who been doing this work, whether it's meditation and yoga and whatever it is. And that's how my journey started. I started when I was 17 learning meditation and yoga, and I kind of like went fully in it. So I started learning and teaching, and at later point, I left Syria where I have grown up, and I went to Switzerland where I was working, and then Germany when I was studying. And at that time, I had what they call the dark night of the soul, and all this meditation technique, all this positive focus, all this mantras and chanting and exercise, like really nothing helped. And I feel what was facing me is that all this trauma from my childhood and also from the years of war in Syria and all these things was suppressed somewhere in my subconscious mind, which we call the shadows or the things that we are not aware of. And when my body start to feel more safe and more relaxed, all these things start to surface. And all the pain, all the suffering, all the sadness, all the loneliness, all the grief. I had so much grief from what's happening. And it's somehow in the spiritual community, you should transcend all your emotion. You should like focus on positive things, which helps to some extent. But when you are faced with what's ever like, you would reach one point where all this positive focus and all these things would not work anymore. And I think right now in the planet, we are facing this collective awakening where we are faced externally with all this painful things that's happening. Like when we just look outside, poverty, war, injustice, suppression for freedom, like all these things that reflect us, what's shadows we have inside us. So we are faced with it in a daily basis. And so my journey started from shifting and learning those shadow work tools and looking at what really inside me and being with the sadness. And I remember the first time I allowed myself to be sad, I remember how I fall in love with the sadness. And I was like, that's unbelievable. Like how it could be. Like I was running from this all my life and I don't want to feel sad, don't want to feel depressed. The moment I accepted, with the help, of course, of many tools I can share with it later, but when I really let this sad child in me be there and be present with this, it felt there's something in me transformed. And that kind of was a new chapter of my life where I start to be more in tune to my emotions, listen to my emotions. And also that led me to be with plant medicine, grandmother, Pasca, helped me to, when I had, like many people, they say they have negative trip or bad trip. And I believe bad trip is when we are faced with some emotion and we reject it. So being aware with shadow work allowed me to integrate an amazing healing experience with ayahuasca that helped me go out of depression. I didn't have any more suicidal thoughts. I was creating like new connection, starting creating the community. So that was the path of led me to shadow work. And since then, I'm very fascinated about, and I quit my job in IT. I was working in IT and the world doesn't need one more programmer or guy, but need a lot of those information and healing techniques. So that became my new passion. And since then, I've been studying different kind of shadow works and applying them to myself, to my friends, and to my clients as well.
That's beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. And I want to highlight something that you said. It was like this idea of resistance, right? They say that what you resist persists. And I feel like that's really what happens with our shadows. We learn not to like them from the beginning because we're told like sadness shouldn't be felt, you shouldn't be angry, all of this, stigmas
Yeah.
that we're grown up around. And
Mm-hmm.
then we hide them from ourselves and from others. I
Yeah.
feel like that's also why relationships end up being this really interesting practice ground. and
Definitely, yeah.
playground, right? Because like all of a sudden, I don't want to show that I'm angry or that I'm jealous or that I'm codependent. And then I
Yeah,
create all these strategies around and how to hide them. And then the other person triggers these things naturally. And it's
yeah,
like, okay, how do I stop running away from this aspects of myself, right? And I feel like to to stand on a safe ground is the most important part to then be able to work with the shadows. Especially, I feel like, right? This is my opinion. Especially if it's coming from like trauma or hard things that you faced in this or
mhm.
in previous lifetimes. If you don't have a safe container, exploring those shadows can be really re-traumatizing, right?
Yeah, I think the safety in relationship is something important. I believe in healing trauma through relationship, and that require an honest and authentic connection. And most importantly, the commitment to be with each other, and the commitment to go down the rabbit hole together. Like not, oh, this person triggered me, I block you, I, I disconnect from you. I think this is the most important thing. And what you shared about relationship is really important, because the trauma happened in relationship. Like why we learn those anger or those sadness and or whatever emotion are not good for us, because they didn't give us connection. Whenever we had certain behavior that was not approved by our parents, we get in the most healthy family, at least you will get disapproval, or you will get disconnection, or you will get like this, you know. It doesn't have to be your father beat you, or your mother shouted at you. It just could be something very subtle, as they withdraw from you, and that
Mm-hmm.
teach the child, this behavior doesn't get me connection, so the child sacrifice her or his authenticity for connection. And this is what repeat itself in our relationship nowadays. We see a lot of people hanging out together, but there is not really connection, because all this subtle element and subtle emotion are not present, because they were not encouraged in childhood. They didn't come to the surface, and we learn to relate to each other in what's acceptable in society. And that create a very boring dynamics. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you look at many people, how they connect, they either connect around sports or around
Food,
video games, food, like all
alcohol.
this,
I know.
exactly, like all this, like normie things. Like rarely you find people having deep
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah, and this is why, this is a reason why we're not the reason. This is a manifestation of people not being authentic and not doing the shadow work. If we done shadow work, and I know your community, I know some people are really deep and really beautiful, and I know conversation can go really deep and really beautiful, and you feel every time you know this person in a deeper level. And I feel like this is where the new earth is heading, and this is what we are creating, healing our shadow, knowing our shadows, healing our trauma will manifest definitely in a way that we are relating to each other in an authentic way.
Oh, I
And
love it.
yeah,
And this was what you're saying, right? We get to know each other at a deeper level. I find that in my experience with shadow work, it's been like really a peeling off of layers. And the initial layer is like a really gross sensation, you know, like sadness,
yeah,
as you mentioned. I also remember the first time I allowed myself to. I was heartbroken, you know, this was like 6 years ago, and I just decided to cry until I was like done with it.
amazing.
And I remember crying and crying and crying, and like having like this perspective as above of feeling, hearing the crying and experiencing it, but having like a distance. It's like, oh, it's like I'm playing a theater show. Like I'm supposed to play the character that is crying. And I remember always
Yeah.
that little
Wow.
space that I could create could
Mhm.
help me then peel that initial layer.
Amazing. Yeah.
And then I just, yeah, I feel like it is like that, like peeling the onion. And then you reach into, yes, okay, there's sadness, but then there's something more, and then there's abandonment, and then there's this little child that is
Yeah.
looking for, usually it's love, attention, acknowledgement. And so
Yeah.
like being able to call in your, what a teacher of mine called the resources, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's really hard to offer them yourself, but you call in your resources
Definitely.
to hold that pain, because behind any monster that we may seem like in the shadow work, it's really a wounded child. And then
Definitely. Yeah.
that's where I feel like the work of compassion then really starts making a difference.
Hmm.
And what I found also in relating with others who then authentically show up is that when someone, you know, starts playing in from a triggered place, you just see like that little wounded child, and then that allows you to not take things personally so
Yeah.
much. and
Yeah.
to activate like that compassion gland that can hold that adult playing a child, like
Yeah.
tantrum child, you know?
Amazing. And by that, you're offering them amazing opportunity for growth and being seen. And
Hmm.
yeah, and I feel like here where deep connection and relationship comes. And I also liked what you said about like witnessing the crying child in you. And I love this because this is what we call an internal family system. It's one of the methods that I use for healing. This is what we call the aware self, and connecting to
Hmm.
the aware self is something really crucial in our healing. Most of us are not able to do that because they are from one trauma pattern to another. And there is those like aha moment where you, like what you said, you zoom out and you let yourself be seen from above and having this higher perspective on yourself. And this is maybe some people reach it in meditation, some people reach it in their spiritual practice, but I feel like this is where we can actually be our true nature, our true self, and witness I call it the kindergarten that we all
I
have
love
inside.
it.
Yeah, so we can see the children, we can see the little children who want attention, we can see the children who adopt responsibility. We call them in the internal family system, we call them the managers who want
Mm.
to keep you on a track to be a good boy or a good girl so you can get approval from your parents. So we can
Oh,
see
wow.
all this. I call it a playground because it's amazing to see how your consciousness develop, and when you have the compassion towards yourself, you're opening space for like a deeper meaning of life. And I feel like life. I was just having this thought in the breathwork today that we are so we are so rich in all this understanding and the experience that we can have of ourselves and the world outside us. So it just
Mhm.
like it feels like there's infinite potential to grow and move and to yeah to
And
develop. So
to experience, and something that that I really like and appreciate of your work, and this idea of coming back to the light and the shadow that we are, and bringing in unison,
mhm.
is this this concept that I'm really diving into in my experience and in my practice and my teaching, that is like this non-duality, really, like the
Mhm.
transcendence of like this is good and this is bad, and one should do this and one should do that. And
Yeah,
I'm coming from the yogic background where Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Samkhya, all of this is very dualistic in nature.
yeah,
And like the mind should be focused, and this is what should happen, and you should withdraw from the pleasure of the senses. And
mhm.
like it took me years to understand that that was just a very boring route to
Yeah,
self-realization,
yeah,
just not what I was subscribing myself to. And it
yeah.
is through that integration of experience, because consciousness, that witness, is able to experience both things, pleasure and pain, to the same degree of intensity. And when we detach from the labels, let's say, that the mind create and the stories of that we develop around it, then experience is just that Shakti
Mhm.
energy moving through
Yeah.
you, and through that realization and that witness perspective, you can realize so much. It's so enriching.
Yeah, and I really love what Teal Swan is. I think you know Teal Swan.
Hmm.
She's an amazing spiritual teacher. I love what she's sharing, that you experience the world through your desires, and this is your way of growing. So in many like old tradition, we used to think about desire as something bad, as something that you shouldn't
Hmm.
be controlled by your desire. But those are the indicator of where your curiosity and where the things that bring you aliveness in life is laying. So whenever you have like a desire to experience something, go a little bit deeper. So some people maybe have desire to have a house, and the spiritual practice, one of the things I share with my clients, is to go a little bit deeper. What the feeling signature you want to have from having a house? Is it the safety? Is
Hmm.
it the feeling of belonging? And when you go for the feelings in every little step of your life, this is where your life is more fulfilled. And I also want to share another point about, and there's so many thoughts coming to me. I want to share a thought about non-duality,
Hmm.
because I see that there is a lot of misunderstanding about non-duality and escapism. Like people use it for coping. People who fail achieving something or fail fulfilling their desire, they tend to run away from um, like the natural way of being human in this body by making it, oh, everything is equal, everything is okay, and
Mm.
everything is. And I think there's a big shadow in this because, yes, true, in some higher aspect, there is non-duality in the non-physical, but the physical, the existing physical, it's based on duality. You can't just bypass that. You need to admit to this reality that we live in. And part of the admission for it to recognize what's right and wrong. And this is, I think, where, I don't know if you heard of the natural law. It's a fascinating, oh my God, I can talk about this forever. So it's the natural law that come with everything that's in existence, which contain, oh my God.
Polarity.
Yes, polarity is one of them, and the discernment and the free will, that every person have the discernment, and yes, right and wrong exist. For example, we're talking about animals. If you would have the choice to eat something plant-based, for example, and then you choose to kill animals and eat it, that's a wrong act. You're committing murder in this case. And here we need to be like stand in reality and integrity and differentiate what's right and what's wrong. And this is one of the things that many people bypass, like, and say, oh, you can just pray for it and it will be positive, you know?
Yeah, wow,
It's
it's
just
so
like a
true.
little,
It's so true, and you raised a very important point. Because yes, exactly, at a deeper level, everything is one. And when I talk about non-duality, I don't mean that yes, everything is equal and you can go do whatever you want, kill someone. At a very, very high level, yes, at the end it's all one consciousness playing its own
yeah,
game. But from at least from the perspective of where I'm coming from, the tradition of non-duality, it's more like, can you embrace both sides the same? Can you
yeah,
be, in the same state of self through pain and through pleasure, because they are the two parts of existence. They are the two
yeah.
polarities that we cannot
Yeah,
deny.
I think we need to integrate like different aspects in this because yes, like an embrace. Like for example, if you see somebody beating a dog on the street, yes, you can embrace to some level. If you're very evolved, you can feel the love towards the one who's abusing the dog, right? And you can feel
Mm-hmm.
the love to the dog and see that they are like playing like a circle and be there. But I feel in this embodiment, in this human experience, we meant to be a guardian of the earth. We meant to interfere
For
when we
sure.
see something that's not in alignment and say, hey, stop, and put your energy in stopping this. And I see this can take place in many different things. Like, for example, us as a conscious being, we can take a decision to be vegan. We can take a decision to be um, doing action that protect environment. We can, if we have the ability, we can grow our own food. We can move to from the city life to more sustainable way of living. This is all our choices that we can do, and of course, each person can do it to the extent that's feel doable for you, for them.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
and what I think is that, like, the more you inhabit a space of awareness, the more action will respond from a whole place and not from a wounded place. Because a wounded place will go and beat the hell out of the guy who's beating the dog. And it's
yeah,
like, is that going to help? No. But through, okay, like this is happening, compassion is arising. It's like compassion for the guy who clearly has a lot of trauma there to heal. Of course, much more for the dog. But it's like, then how can action be inspired from that place of wholeness and not from our shadows that are getting triggered?
yeah, exactly. And this is where it comes like the shadow work. Like if we embrace the person in us whose violence towards the dogs, only then we can have love towards the one who's abusing the dog. And this is the most difficult thing because those aspects we disown so much. And when we really do the integration, one of the integration tools that I use in my sessions is parts work, where we see, like some people even can have the ability to see how this part inside them would look like. And sometimes it would look like a general or a soldier or like an abuser. And if we can manage to integrate this part and see how this part actually acted in my external life and seeing the wounded child in this part and integrate it, only then we can love those people who do abuse to each other. And this is why I'm so fascinated about shadow work, because I think it's the way we are creating a new earth. Like we can't
Yeah.
really come to this state of love and acceptance unless we integrate those parts who we judge bad or abusive or whatever.
Definitely. And yeah, before we close, if anybody has any questions who's watching, feel free to type them in. And in the meantime, I want to ask if you have like a regular practice regarding this, like, I don't know, every morning or every week or whatever, like if you want to share with us what's your shadow practice.
So maybe two things. For people who are in relationship, I would suggest you to use this relationship to help you reflect on yourself. So for example, whenever your partner trigger you, and this is something I do with Mia quite a lot, whenever your partner trigger you in something, this partner is your mirror, guys. So use this as a tool to sit with yourself and feel what's the trigger and why you hate this action, or you're nervous of this action, or you resent this action in your partner. And for those of you who don't have relationship, there's another exercise, which is find where you get jealous from others. So if you have any friend or any person in your circle that trigger jealousy in you, that means there is something there that you desire, but you believe you can't have. And this is something that you need to also do a lot of shadow, maybe not a lot. And if you can't find somebody to, if you can do it on your own, please reach out and find somebody to help you with that, because this is how you evolve in life. It's so important. So what you need to do, you need to see what's in this person's life that I really like to have, but I believe I can't. And then admitting first that you want to have this thing that he has. Many people don't admit to their desire because of a lot of spiritual bypassing techniques that we learned. Yeah. So admitting to your desire, like, yes, I really want this. And then trying to reflect on yourself, why I can't have this. And for that, we're doing like a bi-weekly group session where we deal with internal resistance, like what's holding you back from manifesting something in the external. So if you can do it yourself, feel free to join our group sessions.
Amazing. Something that really worked for me in my shadow exploration, let's say, was this concept of radical self-honesty. Because as you said, sometimes we really don't want to admit to ourselves that we feel lonely or whatever it is, right? So like for me to really sit with my shit, and I was like, okay, radical self-honesty, what am I unwilling to feel? Or what am I unwilling to see? You know, what techniques and what things I'm using to blind myself. So that's also something that I wanna offer to people, like that potential of contemplating with radical. It has to be a radical self-honesty.
Yeah, it would be also more powerful if you do it with the other person who can reflect to you.
Right. Wow, so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't know how's the time now. Oh, we are almost half an hour.
Yeah.
Let's see.
We could talk. We could talk forever. I feel like this topic deserves so much more, but it's just a little taster for people. Because what I was gonna say is that I feel like even that, working with a partner with shadow work, it opens to a new level of vulnerability that leads to real intimacy.
Definitely.
Coming back to, tracing back to how we started, like the authentic relating that can happen to that. Like we stop just living in the surface with ourselves and with people, but we were able to go to the depth of experience and of life.
Yeah, and that's the juiciness of life at the end, right?
Yeah, beautiful, amazing. Well, maybe we have to do another sequel to this.
Yeah.
Thank you for the people who were watching.
Maybe, you know what, Lalita, maybe we can do it in person, like going live when we are in the same place, since we are in the same town.
Definitely. I'll be coming to Vilka in like 3 weeks, so I'll see you there.
Oh, wow. It get extended. Okay.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you everybody for watching. It's been like a really long time since I hosted one of these talks. It's called Chitta Chats, and Chitta means hard mind. It's like this field of experience through thoughts and emotions and sensations. And yeah, this is, I think, the 11th talk that I've had. Actually, for the people
I need to go and check the previous ones.
There's a previous one that connects so much with this that we're talking about. It's from my friend Sabrina, and we're talking about attachment styles. I think you're familiar with it. And wow, she's a scientist, behavioral scientist, and that talk is really good. I recommend for people who are watching this one.
Yeah, this is something we also talk a lot about it in our community, and also we did like some with the plant medicine, so we can see the depth of how attachment styles work. I was like also mind blowing with the microdose.
Wow.
Yeah. So very
Okay.
fascinating. And I see many of my friends, my Instagram friends and my real friends are watching the live stream. So I would really recommend you to follow Lalita. She's amazing, amazing person, a good friend of mine. And yeah, follow her. She's always active and posting
No,
cool stuff.
amazing. Thank you. And same goes for everybody who's watching this or the repetition, the recording. Ram, yeah, you got a lot to offer to this world, and I'm really happy that we're connecting every time more and more. And I'm
Yeah,
looking
totally.
forward to attend one of your live workshops in the free town of Vilcabamba one day.
I would love to do it. And I'm not so active anymore on Instagram because the censorship and everything, but we have a
Hmm.
YouTube channel with my partner, so I would recommend you. We talk a lot about shadow work, community, living off grid, and many amazing topics. So yeah, come join us there.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Ram, so much.
Yeah,
It was
thank you
a
so much for
pleasure.
this
We need to
initiation.
do yeah, a second one.
Definitely.
Okay.
Ciao, everybody.
Ciao.
Ciao.